Great, thank you, Haley.
Thank you.
As a preliminary matter, this is Brian Sullivan, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Committee, to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
I'm here.
Meg Browers.
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Haley Cook.
Aye.
Tucker Holland.
Here.
And I see Ken coming in, but I thought he was taking time off.
He's going to be here for the meeting. Yeah, he's supposed to be off, but he's.
We can't kick him out to enjoy his time off.
I know.
Ken, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yes, thank you.
Great. Good afternoon. This is an open meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust and is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening by video conference via the Zoom app is posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We'll turn to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, please permit me to cover ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and ensure accurate meeting minutes. We will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down a line of members inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. Please speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken for items with public comment, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public who have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged to speak through the chair. And finally, each vote in this meeting will be taken by roll call. So with that, I will switch to, let's see, trust agenda. Forgive me as I move my screens around.
If I may interrupt and ask everyone who's present who is not muted to mute, that would be great.
Great. For the record, I have, since I started reading, and Chantal Murphy has joined the meeting. Chantal, can you hear me? I got a thumbs up. And Dave Iverson.
Here.
Okay, great. He's joined the meeting. And Vicky from Town Council has joined the meeting as well. So with that, we will move to the agenda. I am going to make one edit on the agenda. We're going to carry minutes for approval to a future meeting as they weren't distributed out in time for everybody's review. So with that note, that item 3 will push over. Can I get a motion for item 2, the approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve.
A motion from Rima and a second.
Second.
Second from Penny by roll call. Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Meg Browers.
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
And Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Brian Sullivan's an aye. I just want to note that I'm appreciative of how many little boxes are in the meeting, and it's not hard to find all the members. So thank you everybody for attending. Item 4, so we'll jump to that. Public comment for items not otherwise on the agenda. Can I get a show of hands of any members of the public who would like to speak?
I would. My name is Mary Mack.
Okay, Mary, hang on one second before you go. Robert, is your hand up? It's out of the screen, so I can't see it.
No, it's not. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, Mary, thank you for holding 1 second. The floor is yours. I have you as the only member of the public.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to share some ideas that I have. and I wrote them down, so I'll just read it. First, my name is Mary Mack. I'm not a official member, of course. So anyway, number one, I ate at a restaurant about a month ago, and the check included a kitchen appreciation fee of 2% of the pre-tax bill. And I thought it was strange and mildly off-putting because the nature of my patronage suggests my appreciation. But anyway, it triggered an idea that perhaps we or the trust could have a endangered Nantucket community preservation fee on all purchases on the island. The Ford Garage, Stop and Shop, other groceries, hotels, and then especially the Airbnbs and the short-term rentals. So instead of fighting to limit short-term rentals, maybe we could charge a community preservation fee. So that's,
So Mary, Mary, that's a wonderful idea, and I appreciate you coming to bring it. If I may help you with two items that exist at the moment. There
Okay.
is a short-term rental tax on Nantucket. The tax, it applies to hotel rooms and short-term rentals. It's 11.7%. And a portion of that fee is directed by the select board to affordable housing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So no, that's great. So there is opportunity to continue to work with the select board and look to raise the amount of money. So there is a revenue source that exists there, and it is a great opportunity. And to your point, it could short-term rentals could be a way to fund affordable housing. The other is Nantucket's home rule petition that we have had at the State House for a number of years is to generate a transfer fee on all sales over $2 million at 0.5%. And that has been at the State House for a number of years. Unfortunately, it has received great opposition from the Board of Realtors.
Right, I know
on
about
the
that.
state
Yeah.
and national level. And
Mhm.
just recently as last week, Senator Sear had an amendment in a bill to try and get it pushed through just for Nantucket. And unfortunately, he had to pull his amendment because it was going to lose greater support for the bill. So
Yeah.
this is a
Mhm.
great idea, and it is in the pipeline to work through. But I think, and Tucker or Ken, please remind me, are we on year 8, 9, or 10? I don't know on that.
Maybe the boats too. Can the boats be charged a fee? Or is that not possible?
I don't know the answer to that
Isn't there
question.
already a departure fee or something
Yeah.
on one of them?
Does that go to the housing?
I think so.
I think it's used in other resources. Penny?
Yeah, I was just gonna say there already is a fee on top of the cost of the boats. It's a community, I think they call it a community impact fee.
Does it go to housing?
I don't believe specifically, but I think it depends how the question's asked and of whom.
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
I
Sorry,
think
I'm-
it's a matter of who you ask the question and how directly or indirectly it supports housing. You may say it may support sewers, would support houses, but it may not be
Okay, I
actual house
see.
purchase.
All right. I was just thinking of a way to funnel it into that.
Tucker, did you want to address one of Mary's comments, or is it something separate? I see your hand is up.
I had a separate comment originally, but to answer your question, Brian, the home rule petition was set up in 2016.
Great. So
Okay.
Mary, the more
Sorry.
support you can help us generate in the public for the home rule petition to get passed for the transfer fee, the better, because it will
Right,
come back in the next
write in.
round of
I did write in.
legislation.
Yes, I did write in. Yeah.
Thank you for
Okay.
doing that, Mary.
Sure.
What's
yeah.
next on your list?
The next thing, perhaps utilize actors' trailers for temporary housing. I read the town bought some acreage behind Gwen Village, put them there, and in other areas owned by the town, reasonable rent paid to the town of Nantucket from those potential renters. Also, so there's some space out in Tom Nevers. And then ask homeowners if they would allow an actor's trailer to be temporarily on their property to house people during this crisis. House community workers for reasonable rent. Town pays for any hookups, partial part of the rent could go to the town. Like if somebody asked me, would you allow an actor's trailer on your property? I would say yes. I'm a homeowner.
I
So
think
that's
again, another great idea, and I'd love to see it get legs. I think at the moment, our zoning bylaw does not allow for that. So you would need to work with town council to generate a zoning article change for the next town meeting to allow an opportunity like that to happen.
Okay, even if it's on your own property. Okay.
Yep.
Temporary thing. All right,
Yep,
and then I did
yep.
the last one, sorry it's taking so much time, but create more incentive for homeowners to help with the crisis. They rent out a room or a cottage affordably. They receive recognition for helping to preserve the Nantucket community, its workforce and future workforce, the children. Then another incentive, prime free downtown parking, get a parking sticker that says something like sponsoring the endangered community, or Nantucket community sponsor, or Nantucket community preservation, something like along those lines. Best tables and restaurants, always had the list on standby. Property tax breaks. I already know that there are some tax breaks with the Housing Nantucket, but this would be like a different thing. And then akin to preserving, it's akin to preserving endangered species, because without that community workforce preservation, the town could die. Nantucket Community Conservation Foundation could be the name of some kind of a think tank. So that's it.
Mary, I love all these ideas and that you took the time to come. Thank you, because now I can talk about all the different things that are out there and you can go and champion them in your community for us. So one of the best benefits that exists in an opportunity like what you're describing is the housing covenant program, where a property owner can subdivide a property, stay in their home, make it the covenant property, pass it to children and children of children for years to come, and
I have
still
a
be
covenant home. I have a covenant
Great.
home.
But I think a lot of people don't recognize that you can sell the market rate property, but stay in the covenant home as long as you qualify for residency and not qualify for the income. So this is a great opportunity for community members to create more affordable housing.
Right, yes, I understand that part.
Great.
I've known about that. These are just other ideas.
Well, very, very appreciative. Thank you. I'm seeing a
Okay,
hand.
sure.
I'm seeing a bunch of thumbs up. So feel free to stick
All right.
around and listen to the rest, or
Sure, okay, thanks. Thanks for letting me share.
Totally. Thank you, Mary. Tucker, as a public comment. You're on mute, so we can't hear anything, but we can see Haley waving at us.
I just want to introduce Haley with a picture here at our first trust meeting. She should have a webcam by our next meeting, but we're super excited, as you all know, to have her here, and she has hit the ground running. And don't go out and buy that Ellen Hildebrand book for your summer reading, because all 10 of those minutes are actually written courtesy of Haley, and you'll be receiving them later this week.
Lots of reading material. Thank
So there's a lot of reading to do. So hold your purchase.
Welcome, Haley.
Any other members of the public while we're still on this item? Seeing none, we'll close item 4. Move to item 5, election of officers. So here we are. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so we have 2 positions to look towards, chair and vice chair. I think the probably easiest way to do this is to pick one position and open up for nominations. So I will leave it to you.
I'll make a nomination that Brian Sullivan serves as our chair for this next year.
I will second that nomination.
Are there any other nominations for the chair position? Seeing none, I will accept the nomination. Do we, in the scenario where there's an uncontested seat, do we still vote?
I would take a vote.
a vote by roll call. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Sean Tom Murphy,
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Hi.
I guess that's it. And Brian, I guess I choose not to vote. It'd be weird to
Abstain.
vote for myself. I abstain. Thank you. Somebody owes me an ice cream. Okay, so we have the next position of vice chair. Are there any nominations for the seat of vice chair? Or before I do that, I'd like to thank Brooke for the years of her participation and service as vice chair and all the work that she has done up to this point. Brooke, do you have anything that you'd like to say?
I would like to say I have loved the job and I would love to nominate Rima Sherry to become vice chair.
Okay.
I'd second that.
I accept the nomination. Okay.
Okay, I have an acceptance nomination. I have a second of Dave Iverson. I'd also like to nominate Penny Dye for the seat.
Can I second that too? I'm
You
confused.
can. It's a separate nomination. You're welcome to.
I have
So
a question. I have a question.
yes,
Do you, I'm just gonna throw this out there. Do you think it would be better for the group if we didn't have two real estate people in these positions?
That was a thought of mine. It might be nice to have a little variance there.
I say that with reluctance, simply because, you know, I've had 46 years of having my opinion count for my opinion, not because of what I did for a living. The climate has changed recently.
it's tricky because you also have an incredible number of years in the affordable housing arena with your seat on the housing authority as appointed by the governor. So optically, my opinion is probably there's some commentary of people who don't know your experience or mine, or the things and time we put into as far as housing goes. So, there's no way to, people are gonna have opinions.
Here's a way to handle it. I'm gonna decline to accept the nomination, and I will offer to back up Rima in running meetings anytime she's not able to do it. Does that seem reasonable?
I think the spirit of our board members is amazing and I love it. And I'm very appreciative of that. I'm going to turn to town council because she has a statement to make. Yes, Vicky.
So perhaps you could have an alternate vice chair, and that could be Penny if she so desired to be there in the event that you need a vice chair at a meeting.
And I would be happy to do that. Just so you don't think that you can go away a lot.
You get the best of both worlds now.
Yeah.
It's gonna take a lot of ice cream. Okay, so Vicky, should I yeah, do I define that? Let's vote on chair, or let's vote on vice chair.
Right.
So in front of us, we have Rima Sherry, who has accepted a nomination by Brooke, seconded by Dave, and encouraged by Penny. By roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Brian Sullivan's an aye. Rima Sherry, I'll open your mic.
I'll abstain.
Cool. Great. Congratulations and thank you, Rima. Okay, so I see a bunch of hands. First, I'm gonna go to Brooke.
I would nominate Penny Dye as alternate vice chair.
Second.
Okay, so, all right, so we have nomination, but before I come to you, Penny, I'm gonna go to Tucker because I think he has a point of clarification or something.
Well, I just had a question for Vicky. I mean, is there value in having Penny nominated for like a traditional alternate role like treasurer or secretary versus alternate vice chair?
I want to put a hold on that concept only because it changes the definition of the role. And I don't know, I want to be careful on what we're committing Penny to in that statement. So
I
go
think,
ahead, Penny.
yeah, I have an opinion on that, which is I'd be happy to serve as alternate vice chair. I'm not so much the other two proposals, if
So
that's okay.
Brooke?
if I may ask Vicky, as alternate vice chair, would Penny be able to also sign documents on behalf of the trust?
So we would, we would be able to authorize by a vote. You could have the authority to be able to sign documents similar to what we do sometimes now. In special circumstances, we would authorize someone to be able to sign. So, that he would have to have the authority by a vote. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's really valuable because sometimes it's hard, in a time sensitive issue to have three members available to sign documents is a valuable thing. So we would just, when we do and I authorize the chair or vice chair to sign, we would say, I authorize the chair, vice chair, or alternate vice chair to sign, right? In those instances.
Right.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
great.
Okay, so we have a motion, a nomination, an acceptance. Now vote by roll call. Is there any more questions, statements?
Did anyone
Okay,
second?
Rima seconded it. You motioned. Penny accepted the nomination. So by roll, Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Penny, Meg Browers,
Aye.
Penny Dye.
I'm going to abstain.
Great. Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being on the board, the commitment, and the awesome working together on that. That was great. Sorry, I clicked away from the agenda. The next item on, so we'll close item 5, election for officers, and we'll move to item 6. We have a CCAP application at 35 Beach Grass Road. Does anybody have any questions on the application itself? Rima?
Yeah, I was a little confused. The price was listed at 200 something thousand, and it was listed as a single family home. Is that all correct, or is this land?
This is a Richmond 80% unit.
That's amazing. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, that was all.
Any other questions on the application for staff or other members? So be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the CCAP application for Prince at 35 Beach Grass Road.
Can you add on the up to $15,000 to be
Up to
returned?
$15,000 and authorize the chair to sign.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Second from Rima by roll call. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy. She may have stepped. Oh, there she is. I got an aye, right? Did I hear that?
Yes, aye.
Oh, thank you. And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Great. So we'll close item 6 and we'll move to 31 Fairgrounds update. Before I come to Ann, does staff have anything on this item? Seeing no.
We had a construction committee at the site at the end of last week, very constructive, but I'll let Ann cover the territory that we discussed.
Great. Ann, floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Ann Cuspa, Housing Nantucket, and I'm here with Billy Cassidy, the builder for the project. And yeah, we went over there, did a construction subcommittee site visit, and we saw a lot of progress. The interior of buildings 1 and 8 is moving right along, and we're very pleased with the way that it's turning out. I know we have some updates from Billy as far as the schedule and other things, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Ann. Bill, floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. The floor is mine. I'm trying to remember what we talked about the last time. I think that the news was that there was a structural change at the mothership of the modular home company that impacted our deliveries. And having said that, that has all been sorted out. I believe, well, regardless what I believe, we had 9-8 as a first barge available for building 3, which is coming before building 2. There was a clerical error there, and it is now September 9th, not the 8th, that barge is coming. We have another tentatively scheduled for the 30th. I received something from Elaine Mooney yesterday, Erica Mooney yesterday, suggesting that she would prefer that building moves happen on Thursdays and Fridays and modulars Mondays and Tuesdays. So I'll be dealing with that in the next day or two, but we'll be able to work around that. And then there are a whole series of barges that Elaine Mooney has the list for, and we will receive first dibs on as soon as the Steamship Authority opens up fourth quarter bulkhead reservations, which is imminent. But as an example, we have about 10 barges scheduled between the 9/30 date that I just mentioned and 12/6 or December 6th, which will be the last one. And that will be the last barge containing building number 7, which will be the last to arrive. Things have actually sped up on the interior a little bit since the meeting just the other day. The plumber will be in next week and not in 3 weeks. The HVAC company is, as we speak, moving material into both of the buildings, and they are going to be fully engaged later on this week. The basement floors are being poured at the beginning of next week, and we have finally been able to locate some reasonably priced vertical cedar siding, which buildings 1 and 8 and 3 are covered with. That has been challenging. The price per foot of 1x8 vertical siding, just as an example, went from back in January or December locally of about $15 a linear foot to $25 a linear foot today. And we found a vendor out in Indiana. We have purchased it and we are sending a truck. I think last week at the building committee meeting, we had heard, or I had mentioned that it was a couple of weeks out. We just received an email earlier today saying that it's ready to go now. So it will be here next week, which is pretty exciting to cover up, what looks to be an unfinished product. It's going to be pretty neat. And I know that Ann is busily engaging a couple of solar companies on the solar front, and there is progress being made there. And I don't want to talk about that anymore other than to say that. And
may I mention just one, or do you want to finish up, Billy, while we're on the topic of solar?
I think that I am pretty much finished. I would say that if anybody wants to visit, give me a shout. I think everybody has my number, or Tucker and Ann certainly have my number and can distribute it. And feel free to stop by. And Brooke, I bring that up only because we had initially talked about, and I had suggested that I would put up some type of a sign up front announcing things, and I'm going to renege on that. It has been problematic with the number of curious people, all very interested, all very positive. But it has become a little bit of a bother. So, if it's a necessary thing to do, please advise, but I'd prefer not to. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Billy. I see Brooke has her hand up. So if anybody is thinking of specific questions for Ann or Billy. And I know you want to come back to you on solar. So Brooke.
My only thought on the sign, Billy, is it may save you from people coming in and asking questions, that you could just direct them to the sign and the information is there. So it might actually help rather than in terms of interruptions, but that's just a thought.
Understood. We can discuss this more offline if nobody has a concern with it, Mr. Chair, or what have you. I'm just, it has become increasingly busy, and that's all.
Thank you, Billy. Yeah, I think there is some potential, but I can appreciate managing a chaotic construction site with a lot of people around who may not be involved with the project. So, you know, I might challenge, maybe we advertise a future date, and this would be to you, a future date for a tour where the site could be safely prepared, and you could advertise, you know, 1 3-hour window if anybody wanted to show up. Otherwise, have a time. And I'll go back to you. You wanted to share some comments or thoughts, I think, on solar.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, basically, we're just really excited about that aspect. I personally am excited about that aspect of the project, where we're shooting for a net zero energy usage, which means that we'll install solar panels that will fully run all of the energy that's necessary for the whole project itself. So it's an expensive venture, though. We're looking for grant funding, but a lot of it requires a cost share from the entity who's going to own the panels in the long run, which is Housing Nantucket. So it's a big chunk that we're trying to raise money and actually generate money so we can do this for the long term. So just putting that out there. If anyone knows of any funding sources or knows of anybody who's looking, you know, who might want to participate, then please get in touch with me.
Maybe that's when we do the property tour, when we have a fundraiser on site to fund the need for solar panels.
That'd be great.
Anything else on this update, Brooke?
Sorry, loads of question. Serial occupancy or everything done before any occupancy?
I'd like to take that. Everything
Okay.
done
For safety reasons, right?
for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is safety. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Billy. Meg, you have your hand up?
And what's the approximate price range that you're looking for support for that?
We need probably about $300,000 is the gap right now. We're applying for the Empower grant, which will provide gap funding of up to $200,000. So that application is due at the end of the week. We're also pursuing local funding from Remain, which looks likely, but you know, we still need to come up with, and it's a requirement of the Empower grant, that there's a buy-in from us. So we need to find some way to fund that. We're getting proposals from different local providers. So we'll be having 3 proposals at the end of the day, I hope, but I'm talking to 3 vendors, and then we'll be choosing the best overall proposal from those 3.
Okay, I have an idea. I'll text you.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Awesome. Love that. Billy?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to caution about, you know, until all of these numbers are back, I'm wondering if you are using as a basis the initial numbers that I had discussed, which are dated at this point. So I just, you know, this is no surprise. Everything is going up. Those numbers may need to be a little dynamic and adjusted, but I think that you'll know slightly with the query that I just received and that we discussed earlier this morning. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Any more questions for the Fairgrounds group? Ken?
Just a reminder to Rima and her group, because of CPC funding, the CPC needs to have a sign up at the end of this project. And you might want to start to just coordinate with Glenna in terms of the nature of what the signs that we've gotten approved are to be on the project.
Thank you, Ken. Go ahead, Rima.
That's physical signs so,
Yes.
okay, that need to be posted. That this was.
Once the project's completed, right? That
Okay,
this was a CPC,
like a plaque sort of a thing.
sort of thing. Yeah, we have a standard that's there. So.
Okay, great.
Okay. With that, we'll close 31 Fairgrounds and we'll move over. Thank you, Anne and Billy, and we'll move over to Richmond Wildflower. Tucker, let you start before we.
Yeah, Dave had to go, but he wanted me to report that the COs have been issued for all 3 buildings, all 24 units. All 12 market rate units are leased and occupied. 5 of the 12 AMI units are leased and occupied. The final 7 AMI unit lottery winners are proceeding through final certification with SEB and should be occupying units in the next 10 to 31 days. Everything going well, and they appreciate the support of the trust, etc.
Thank you, Tucker. Does anybody want to pass on through Tucker questions to Dave to come be reported back to us? Okay, seeing none, we'll close Wildflower Acceleration update and we'll move to 6 Fairgrounds. And Tucker, I'll throw the floor to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to keep the group updated, as you know, there is a gap in the financing requirements to proceed with the 64-unit project at 6 Fairgrounds Road. The total gap is in the neighborhood of 10.9 million. The developer,
yes,
has turned to the town for the 6.5, as we have been discussing for a while. The additional funding would likely come from a special DHCD round they're going to do this fall, either involving further tax credits or actually some available ARPA funding. So the net of all that is there are a team of folks involved in negotiating a favorable outcome, with the developer for the terms under which these monies would go in and allow the project to move forward. As we've talked about before, the developer has secured 18 million so far in subsidy from others toward this project. If we were not proceeding, there's certainly no guarantee that those funds would be available again anytime soon. And so it's in our interest to try to make a deal work, although there are some aspects that we still need to work out with the developer. So that's just sort of the overall update. Happy to answer any questions I can, if there are any.
Thank you, Tucker. I see Brooke, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to express my appreciation to Tucker for the incredible amount of work that's going into the analysis of this deal and his ability to pull together a team of experts that are well representing the interests of this board and the town and the taxpayers in this negotiation and this process. And I have full confidence that we're going to end up in a good place on this. So the best place for the town, wherever it ends up, it'll be the best thing. So.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Tucker. Anybody else have questions for Tucker on 6FGR? Comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close that item and move to 7 Amelia Drive, RFP review and approval. Haley, thank you for putting together that generously long document.
Anytime.
How would you like to start on this review and discussion? Or Tucker.
So Tucker, do you want me to share my screen with this or make you the host so that you can share your screen?
If you want to do screen share
Yep.
that, Haley.
Yep, 1 second. I'm going to share the document that I had sent to the board so the public can see that right now. 1 moment. Okay. So this is the RFP draft that you've seen. Tucker, do you want me to walk through it or do you want to walk through it?
If you want to take a certain and I can
Sure. Okay, so this is the RFP for 7 Amelia Drive. We've got some dates here, proposed issuance on the 17th, inquiries September 7th, submission proposal September 14th, and then presentations would be the 20th. So this is the 7,755 approximately square foot land that AHT has at 7 Amelia Drive. And this RFP asks for developers to bring forth proposals that could include rentals or home ownership. I know there was a discussion of rental preference, but just the language in here is open. And then we can look through here. Just going to go down through this document. If anyone has questions, let me know.
I can't see everybody with the way my screen is blocked out. So if you have a question, just shout it out because I can't see hands to manage.
And this is a lot of the boilerplate stuff.
Yeah, so we'll get down to the objectives. Yeah.
I have a question, Brian, through you, I guess. Can you just refresh my memory why we were opting for rental housing here?
Well, at the last discussion we had, there was some discussion around whether the site lent itself more toward rental housing versus ownership housing. We've left it open to either here. I'm not sure. I mean, I think they're both ownership and rental residential situations on Amelia Drive. So I'm not sure why one would be absolute versus the other in this case.
And it could it not be a hybrid, a mixture?
It could perhaps be a hybrid.
I just would like to keep that possibility open.
I think we've left it as broad as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, any language that limits it to only one or the other has been taken out. So it is open to either option or both. So just a reminder.
Haley, I'm going to stop you for just a second. I do see Vicky's hand. And I want
Oh, okay.
So, in looking at the document and looking at the RFP, there's nothing that says in here that the town is going to either ground lease this property or continue to own this property. Is that correct? Do you have a vision of what you want to do?
Well, that was actually a discussion point for today, Vicky, is whether we wanted to retain the ownership or like outright transfer it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because depending upon what you end up deciding will change.
Yes, of course. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Brian?
Go ahead, Brooke.
It's Brooke. I think one of the reasons we talked about rental was because only one unit would have to be at 80%, but because this was acquired with CPC funding, they all have to be at 100% AMI. So if it were home ownership, they, for them to qualify in the shy lift, they would all have to be at 80% AMI. So I think leaving it flexible leaves open the most options, because you could do one at 80% and two at 100% and all qualify if they were rentals.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, back to you, Haley.
Sure. So as Brooke just mentioned, because of the funds, 100% of the units need to be 100% AMI or less, which is what this document is talking about. And what Vicky brought up, we were talking about a grant agreement, or if we need an LDA or a ground lease. So we'll go back to that question for discussion in a moment. This is a lot of the general information that we'll see on most of the RFPs about the aesthetic and the unit sizes and the energy efficiency. But if anyone has questions, please let me know. Just want to make sure we show this for the public viewing. Okay, so this outlines what we're looking for in terms of the developer and the project and the scope. We'll go to the scoring chart to look at that more specifically.
So I'll just mention that, you know, the basis for where we started out with this is the RFP that was utilized for 6 Fairgrounds, and then tailored it down given the specifics of this location and the different scale between this project and that. But a lot of the, you know, relative criteria to experience and so forth obviously all apply in both cases. So
yes, thank you. And we did include, I heard at the meeting that there was an importance of storage. Parking was very important to everyone. So I included all of those items that were flagged. But if anyone sees something missing that they needed added, we will put that back in. And then evaluation criteria, we'll go down to that and you'll see in a moment. Okay. 30B attachments. Okay. Oh, this got moved down, but you'll see the lot. Here it is on the GIS map. GSI. Okay, so there was a question for possibly Vicky or everyone about a specific, this deed that we have pulled up talks about the 12,900 square feet, but as you saw earlier, the actual lot size is around 7,755, I believe, square feet. So I think there was a question of if this was subdivided at some point. Perhaps I can talk offline with Vicky about that, but just wanted to note that here as this is a draft. And then we'll get to the evaluation, which I know is what everyone wants to look at. Yes. Okay. All right. So evaluation criteria. Again, as Tucker said, we used this a template of the Fairgrounds. We did add here the desire for a nonprofit developer. I heard that in the meeting prior that that was something you were all looking for. And then it has many things that we've had before. So experience with projects, energy efficiency, things of that nature. Does anyone have questions or comments? Okay. We included the local preference here for affordability. And then again, we made sure to talk about storage and parking and screening as well. And then we did include, I believe I heard Brian Sullivan, Mr. Chairman, mention that you would like to have an ADA compliant unit if possible. So we did include that in here as well. Let's see. Funding sources. Almost through here. This document needs to be updated. And then we've got the attachments. And I do have a question on specifics on one of these attachments. And again, this goes back to the discussion about the LDA or ground lease or what we're going to do here, but we need to figure out what type of transaction it is and the specifics. So I can talk to Vicky as well, or we can decide that offline, but that is the document. One other thing I'll note briefly is that there was a discussion about commercial lots or land and that it was neutral, that it wouldn't affect score. So in the objective, there is a note, if I can go back to the top here, about inclusion of a commercial space, that it is allowed. Let's see. Sorry, looking for it. Tucker, do you have anything to add on this? It says, while not required, the inclusion of commercial space for nonprofit enterprise will be considered. That's all I have on this.
Thank you, Haley.
Yes.
So with that, I'll open to questions kind of directed Tucker or Haley as far as the existing document goes.
Stop the screen share.
Seeing none out of the gate, the only one that I have, Tucker and or Haley, is the timeline that is on there. Seems very, very fast to me for somebody to work with an engineer and an architect to put something together. So issuing August 17th, 3 weeks later, I don't understand the difference between an inquiry deadline and a proposal submission deadline.
Stop the screen share.
I'm trying to, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Guys, I'm just trying to stop my screen share here, having a little issue with Zoom here.
Gotcha.
My apologies.
So I can answer the question about inquiry deadline. It's a matter of the procurement process, Brian, where there's a period of time where potential proposers can submit inquiries, and those inquiries are then printed and published for all other people who've registered as potential proposers, so that it's like an open question and answer period
Okay.
while the RFP is out there. I agree with you. The timeline is tight given the demand on professionals right now, that I would say we should slide it a month at least into October. And my other comment would be, this should be a ground lease, not a transfer of the real estate. Unless for some reason a home ownership model would prescribe or would not allow for that for some reason. But I think that the plan should be a ground lease, very inexpensive ground lease.
So Brooke, so you would do inquiry deadline, like inquiry deadlines out a full month. So from August 17th to September, whatever the 4 weeks is, September 17th, we'll call it. And then
I would just push the whole,
in October.
I would just, the dates are dictated by procurement.
Right.
So I would just push the whole thing a month, and whatever day of the week is the appropriate one to post it. It would just push it out, the whole thing out 1 month with the specific dates to be determined by procurement.
Okay, so Brooke mentioned two things. So that one first, does anybody have any thoughts, comments? Okay, seeing none, I agree with you that more time the better. I see Mr. Cassidy just took his microphone off. As a builder developer, is that a realistic timeline? I'm going to pick on you because you kind of made a motion or moved.
I didn't say anything, but I will.
Okay.
So Brooke's point is well taken. There is it would be almost impossible unless somebody is already teed up to perform on this, to perform by next month, or what is close enough to call it next month.
Okay. Is it enough time?
Yeah.
Is the question, or do we have the ability midstream to extend this, or does that throw out the RFP and it has to start over?
No,
procurement.
You can extend it, but I think we should try to have a date that we feel is reasonable out of the gate.
If it becomes, pardon me, Brooke.
Please, Billy.
So when would this be published?
Likely around August 17th.
Then you need to go out at least until October. At least until October.
So I guess my challenge question would be, is inquiry deadlines October and proposals November? I recognize too how busy everybody is, and I don't want to lose the opportunity for somebody to make a proposal because we can't get an engineer or an architect's overwhelmed or something along those lines.
So 2 months out.
I hate pushing out timelines, but I think it's realistic based on the service providers that are out there.
I have a question regarding the inquiry deadline. I think the inquiry deadline can be much closer to the bid submittal deadline, unless maybe, Brian, I misunderstood you about that ending in October and the submittal deadline in November. In other words, people are typically working on these things right up until and almost until the deadline itself. That, you know, giving a surfeit of time in between the inquiry deadline and the submittal deadline is probably counter.
I think that if you're going to move it out 2 months, we still want to keep some distance between the inquiry deadline and the actual proposal due date, because you want to ensure that whoever is working on this receives the inquiry information that is submitted and the answer in a timely manner to incorporate it. So I think you've solved the issue that Billy is bringing up by extending the deadline 2 months.
Yeah, for me, part of the thing is with that is any job takes the amount of time you give it. So I worry that if people don't start until October, they've missed an early on inquiry window to really put pen to paper and drawing and figuring out the math. So
well, that's their bad. Then.
No, I understand that, but I want to make sure that there's enough time to do a bunch of drawings, do a bunch of math, figure out if you can make it work, ask your questions, and then sharpen your pencil.
And I think you've done that by extending it 2 months, maybe. I did whatever you choose to do. We don't want to have an inquiry deadline that is a week before the due date of the proposals.
Understood. Okay, so coming back to Brooke's second point that she discussed for discussion, that she raised the thought that a lease over a transfer was of preference for her. Is there any discussion on that item? Rima?
I would like to hear Vicky weigh in on ground lease versus a conveyance. And, you know, also given the fact that I don't know if we've officially conveyed the roadway portion to the town. That's, you know, obviously why the actual lot that's going to be in the RFP is smaller than the original lot on the deed. But if Vicky has an opinion on this, I'd like to hear it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Rima. Vicky?
So generally, I mean, depending upon the situation, you can go with either a ground lease for 99-year term or an actual sale. I find that most of the projects are being done using a ground lease right now. The town is able to retain control over this land in a ground lease, whereas if you've conveyed the property outright and then for whatever reason the project gets into trouble, you're dealing with, you know, a mortgagee, and the property has already been conveyed subject to this mortgage. Whereas in the ground lease, you still have more control over the situation. There still could be a leasehold mortgage, obviously, but the town still ultimately is the fee owner of the property. And at the end of the 99 years, if, you know, the property is, for whatever reason, is not extended under a lease, the town still has control of this property to do what it sees fit. And then there's always an affordable housing restriction that's going to be placed on this property in perpetuity, regardless of whether it is the ownership is transferred or there's a ground lease on it. So either way, there's going to be an affordable housing restriction on this property in perpetuity. And so I think unless there's a reason that you want to have home ownership lots here, in which case you would have to convey the fee in the property to a developer. If you're thinking of rentals, you know, you may want to consider going in as a ground lease.
Thanks.
Vicky, before I go to Brooke on this, on that point, because this property could be condoed out, could the town own the land, condo out units for ownership in that opportunity, where if 3 units were created?
You could do, condominiums can be leaseholds.
Okay.
So you could do that. You know, we'd have to be a little more creative. The developer would have to be a little more creative, but you can do a condominium that's a leasehold, yes.
Okay, great. Brooke, coming back to you.
I would think also if it were a leasehold, it would be easier than this probably can't be subdivided between the town and someone we convey the property to, right? It's too small to subdivide, and the town, it seems to me the legal complications of this portion that's the road, the 3,000 some square feet or 4,000 that's the road and the sidewalk, is, it might be more complicated. It might be easier to do a lease of a portion of a lot rather than trying to convey a portion of a lot that's probably not subdividable. So anyway, we're getting into the weeds, but
it would be more complicated if you were going to try to subdivide individual lots. You would have to go and we'd probably need to talk to Andrew Borse about how you could develop this that way. I think it probably would be easier if this were rental property, because it's not that significant a lot size, and you're going to have 3 units. So I think, you know, if you're considering doing ownership and you want to create separate lots, I think we may need some kind of zoning relief, obviously, too.
Doesn't work.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Billy, did you want to make a comment? Can I see you?
Mr. Chairman, I'm still reeling from calling you Brian. I just can't.
Yeah, I don't know who that person is, but
in any event, you asked the question that I wanted to ask Mrs. Marsh. So thank you.
Yep. Great. Ken, to you.
Just a thought, in view of the announcement that we saw this morning, that Remain is buying keepers, should we have a discussion with them before we do this RFP in terms of seeing if they have any interest in developing this project for affordable housing in conjunction with what they're doing, creating the center there at the Keepers Restaurant?
I see Penny reacting with a thumbs up. Brooke, you have your hand raised.
yeah, I have a lot of ideas about how this might be used in conjunction with that acquisition. However, I mean, I think pushing the timeline out 2 months would allow Remain or a partner thereof to respond to the RFP in a way that would talk about the interplay between the 2 properties as part of the proposal. So I wouldn't want to hold this up. I think we should move it forward. And I think we've set the parameters of this RFP pretty broad, that anything that they might want to do there could fit within this RFP.
I think it's important to give the opportunity to everybody as well, so that somebody may be thinking way outside the box with a brilliant idea that we're not coming up with. So let's see what comes back to us. Tucker?
I just was going to bring up for consideration, I mean, kind of in the spirit of Ken's suggestion of, you know, being good neighbors and just sort of reaching out to understand a little bit more about their plans, and particularly with regard to access to this site, given the easement that is on the keeper's property to access this from one side. I was going to suggest that perhaps we can fine tune the RFP to come back at our next meeting, which is August 16th, and that we could at that time be in position to then have it issued the following Wednesday. So not the 17th, but the 24th. through the public posting system. And that really, given the time we've already added, isn't really changing things dramatically, just for consideration.
I see 1 thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. It seems like that is being well considered. I got a positive head shake. So yeah, take out the screwdriver, tighten the nuts and bolts and screws, and I guess you do that with a wrench. But anyhow, thank you, Tucker. More thoughts and opinions or direction to give these guys while we're here? Vicky?
So the other thing that I just want to point out, I mean, just from looking at this proposed, it says the development's going to be subject to a grant agreement. Okay, so by a grant agreement, are you planning to give funds, or is this just in place of a purchase and sale agreement, or what are you thinking here?
Ultimately, it's what you think, Vicky. No, I mean, it's really it's a place, there's a placeholder for are we doing the ground lease and a land development agreement, or are we, so okay. Yeah, it sounds like the group is, unless I've misheard something, definitely leaning toward the ground lease approach to it. So we'll just want to make sure that we tailor the RFP to reflect that kind of approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when this goes out, you're going to take a position as to whether you're going to ground lease this or sell it.
I think we
At
want
the
to.
next meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's the messaging I got, that we need to make a determination for the next meeting.
Okay. So when I make these revisions, are we leaning towards ground leasing this, and I can tailor it to that with the idea I can make some quick changes if I need to? Is that what you want me to do?
Would you be most comfortable if I look for a motion on ground lease? I guess, can I hear a motion for support of a ground lease? This is, I guess, a non-binding vote, but kind of a temperature of the meeting. Brooke?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
By roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. So Vicky, I guess we're going in the direction of a ground lease.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
No, as did I. I wanted to make it as black and white as I could.
Thank you.
Yep. Any more on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question real quick.
Yes, Haley.
Just to be clear, because I'm going to go back and make edits on this RFP for the next meeting. So we need the ground lease, and then we also would need a land development agreement in this packet. And we would also need to slide the deadlines for submission into October and November. And I heard what Tucker said about moving it from the 16th to the 24th in terms of the issuance. Is there anything else I missed?
That's everything that I heard.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think
Great.
you got it. And I think everybody has had their time.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Haley.
So Haley, just, if you want to make these revisions, and then I'm going to try to rework these documents to make it
legalese.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you want to just sort of get it formatted a little bit better,
Yeah.
that would be very helpful. And then then you can send it to me in a Word format, and I can make the edits that I need.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, Vicky.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brooke, one last final.
Vicky's question about the grant agreement language made me think, are we anticipating a subsidy for this project? And does that have to be included in the RFP?
In the RFP, we ask about how they plan to finance the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just want to note, I just got a piece of helpful feedback. Anyone who is watching the meeting or aware of the meeting, an RFP stands for request for proposal. So as we often throw around the acronyms, I want to make sure that anybody watching post us being here to ask. Okay, so with that, I think we're good there. We'll close item 10 and move to item 11, development of year-round covenant restriction discussion. I asked that this item get put onto the agenda. My thought and intent was that this is probably not the place to create a full program, but if we chunk off items and pieces, I would like us to start moving to a place where there's a restriction that exists on Nantucket for year-round residency that may or may not fall within an affordable AMI category. And so to start that discussion and then the work behind it, I thought, let's put this on the agenda, see if we can give town council some opportunity and some guidelines and some things that we're generally considering. So then we can create a year-round restriction on properties that would be appealing. And then once we have it, let's go find the money to own them, buy them, get them, fund them. So that's why it's on here. And so I wanted to open it up for discussion. Penny?
Yeah, does it make sense to have like a small subcommittee look at this and come back? Or is that just avoiding the work?
I think in my hope, I think that extends it out a little bit further. I think if we said, you know, these are the 5 things that we're looking for, and these are the examples that we know work, then maybe the subcommittee could then be created at the next meeting if we come back with a little bit of structure behind it. That was my thought. Like, do we say, let's take the housing covenant guideline for year-round occupancy, and that's 1, and it's in perpetuity 2. Like, I'm really just looking for a covenant or a restriction that it would exist on a deed.
So just to follow up, are you envisioning this tied to income levels or not?
I think that's some of the conversation here, or how high of a level could it go, or could we do under our purview? You know, like, I'm looking for this in the concept, are there people that want to put this restriction on their properties and give it to us? But at the moment, we don't even have a restriction to define.
So let's talk about, like, if they do that, what do they get for doing that?
Love and consideration, goodwill. Like, there, you know, I think there's a variety of things to be in all seriousness, right? Like,
no, I understand.
We see people gift property to the land bank. We could see people gift a year-round restriction on their property. So in X number of years, it was occupied. I think at the moment, we don't have the funds to have a robust conversation about going out and buying these restrictions. I hope one day in the future we do. It'd be great if we, you know, had a perpetual revenue source to do that. But I guess my point today is, let's start with the restriction and what we're trying to achieve in creating a sub-market in the community that's for year-rounders, that we don't lose housing stock down the road. And if we start with the restriction itself, then we can build all the rest off of it. That was my thought.
Yeah,
So
I think
with that, everybody's raised their hand. Penny, up to you.
Oh, okay, sorry, just very quickly. I think that the covenant model is a very good one. It's been proven over time, but people get something for it, and I think we should be addressing the higher than 150 AMI somehow, if we can, if it is tied to income. That's all I have at the moment, but I think it's a great idea. Let's pursue it.
So Vicky, to that note, do we have the ability to put this with no income restriction? Or can we only go to 240 or wherever?
Well,
sorry, I put you on the spot. And you don't need to answer it now. We can come back next meeting with it. But I guess that's the first question.
It's a complicated question, because, you know, when the trust is developing land or buying it, we're always mindful of the income level restrictions that the trust is supposed to be operating within. Similarly, CPA funded projects, similarly DHCD, projects, they all have income levels that are a little bit different. So I think that, and I know we've talked about this before, but you need to think about, first of all, changing your level of income level, the AMI that you're going to be willing to go up to address. So that's one thing that needs to be addressed at the next town meeting. We need to have something go on that's going to do that for you. So that's one thing. And then this coincidentally can go and try to address some kind of income levels that could be less than that. Say you want to go to 240, for instance, okay, AMIs for acquisitions for trust property. You could do this at, say, 150, minimum 150, or no more than 150. I don't know what Penny was thinking of, whether it was going to be was 150 on the high side or the low
Could it
side.
literally be blank, and then wherever the funding source comes in, if it's an 80 or if it's CPC with 100, and you just fill in the, like, so the general restriction is the same in the qualifications on the restriction, but depending on the funding source, it could be up to your point, as we raise.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And to Penny's point, I guess my goal in the idea of creating this restriction is so we then have groundwork. Maybe there's a future planning board opportunity bonus or a tax break. There's a million different ways, but if we have the restriction defined, then we are starting with something that we're working with.
And so the other thing that you need to consider is who's gonna monitor this or run this, similar to the covenant program, right now. You need some entity. So is the trust going to be the holder of the restriction?
Okay.
Okay.
So I have 5 hands up. I'm gonna start as I see them. Come to Rima.
Yeah, that was my question. I understand how open space restrictions work and, on this, who can hold them. And it almost seems like it's right now outside of our mission and purview to do that without any kind of income restriction attached to it. But I think it would be a great idea. I mean, like the Land Council can hold open space restrictions, the Conservation Foundation, and the Conservation Commission, I think is the only town entity that can for open space. So I think it would be good if we could possibly find somewhere in the country where someone has already done this and had residency restrictions placed on properties and how they're held. I think some research is probably going to be helpful here. And again, it might require a nonprofit to hold and administer these things. And so my question would be, would this trust be able to do that as currently legislated?
Thank you, Rima. So you, Vicky?
So I'm gonna look at the trust document itself after this meeting, just to see whether there's authority already in there for you to hold to hold any kind of restrictions or property interests similar to that. And if there is, because you already have the ability to be able to sell, and grant leases. I mean, you have a lot of authority already built into the document itself. So if we need to extend that, again, we could do that at the next annual town meeting by making amendments to the trust, which might solve that problem. The other thing I'm wondering is, and I know you've talked about this land trust a bit. I don't know whether that would be a vehicle that could hold the restrictions for you.
Thank you, Vicky. Dave Iverson.
Thanks. No, listen, I think we've talked about this a bunch. I think this really is the key tool to preserve the island neighborhoods and to get as many of these places deed restricted as we can. And without funds to buy them up. I mean, I think the gifting idea is good. I think we need to figure a metric for what this is worth. Because if they gift it, there's definitely some tax advantages they can take. So depending on what situation that property owner's in, they may be able to take some benefit from gifting a deed restriction to the town. So I think that's one thing we should look into is what the matrix, what's the value of these restrictions, and then at least apply that to the gift idea. And then, unfortunately, stuff happened in the State House, but I think we really need to aggressively look for funding for this program, because this is the program that will save our local neighborhoods. Thanks.
I agree that the funding is critical, but at the moment, I don't want the funding to get in the way of the work of creating it, is kind of where my mindset has been. Because to your point, Dave, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for a way to how do we move it forward.
No, 100%. I think the gift part's great, and I think we need to make it pay them on the back end tax wise. So we need to come up with a matrix to what that restriction's worth. And I know it'll be different depending on the neighborhood and the size of the house and everything else, but I think we could probably start putting something together there.
And to that point, the value will be different to everybody, right? So the value to a potential buyer, if it was down payment assistance, would be different than to an owner who plans to be in their house for the next 40 years. So like there's a variety of difference in what value actually means to that person's circumstances. So,
and maybe we need to define that restriction too, so people know what they're getting into, what our expectations are.
Well, I think that's my goal in this conversation, that we as a group charge Vicky to define the restriction, and we start the work on that. And what does it look like in perpetuity, and what's the expectation of definition of year round, and how does that work within your family, et cetera, et cetera. So, Brooke.
Hi, Dave mentioned down payment, or somebody just mentioned down payment. I think this is definitely ties into any idea we have of a down payment assistance program. I mean, obviously the easiest way to create a down payment assistance program now is to do it within properties that are already deed restricted, like covenant homes, right? So I'd like to see this in the context of us developing a down payment assistance program as well. And then can we apply it to houses outside of that don't already have deed restrictions on them, and how would we do that? But I would, it's a little stretch on the item on the agenda, but I would really like to move forward with a down payment assistance program as well, because I think we can fund that sooner rather than later and make covenant buying accessible to more people in the near term.
I want to make it that make sure that this kind of crosses over. The restriction is the covenant, right? So
right.
Let's just create it and then apply it to whatever price point the funding source is coming from. So it's not necessarily boilerplate, but it's boilerplate to some level of this is what the year-round marketplace looks like, right? For a sub-market to exist on Nantucket, no matter how we're funding it, this restriction needs to come into play. And this addresses a lot of concerns that are in the community about housing stock and where housing stock is going. But we need to take this restriction and apply it across a variety of potential price points. So
yeah, and if I may, this is going in the direction that I've been talking about for years, that I observed when I visited Guernsey Island. They have literally two markets. That's one that's accessible to people who live and work there, and one that's accessible to off island buyers. And I think we're all rowing in the same direction in terms of that's the long-term need for Nantucket as well, to preserve enough housing to have a sustainable and active and healthy year-round community.
Penny, thank you, Brooke. Penny, you had your hand up for a second.
Not on purpose.
Okay. There were a couple people who had their hands up and then took them down, whether their question was answered, but I want to make sure they have opportunity to talk. So there is a general public member that has a question just before I come to them. Vicky, has there been enough of a conversation here to make a request of you? I don't know, to come back with something for the next meeting so we can create a subcommittee and.
So, well, I think you've given me a lot of ideas. Okay. I think I'd like to go back and take a look at the programs that you already have created on Island, having to do with the Covenant program, also, you know, keeping property within a family type idea. There are a number of things here that we could look at, and then the idea of what the trust is empowered to be able to do on its own. Right now, do we need changes to, you know, to the trust document itself? So I have a lot of things here that I can certainly work on, and then come back to you with maybe some ideas and maybe a concept. I won't have definite, obviously, guidelines ready because I'm going to need your some further input, I think, but I definitely could come back to you with a concept that you could consider, and then we could refine it. And so the next,
so we're starting.
Yes, I could definitely get a start here. And so the next meeting is August 16th. Is that what you said?
I think that's what Tucker said the day before we were going to do the original
Right. Okay.
RFP.
Okay.
Thank you, Vicky. Now, Mary, I'll come to you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I heard somebody say a while ago, what do they get for it? And that was about the incentive to gift a home or a cottage and allow the deed restriction. And I was thinking that's where simple incentives might come in. It's a donation, and people like to be recognized for donating, and perhaps some kind of a plaque at the hospital saying so-and-so donated their house or cottage and allowed the deed restriction. And then again, like I was mentioning earlier, perks, free downtown parking and all that. That's it.
Thanks, Mary.
Sure.
So I think we've covered that item. I'm going to close that for now, and we'll jump to RFP timetable. And Haley, were you running with this, or Tucker, were you running with this?
I can talk about it. So I just wanted to circle back to a discussion that we had in the spring regarding timetable for issuing RFPs for some of the sites that we've acquired, like specifically Orange Street, Bartlett Road, the Vesper Lane property, and then also the White Street property. At the time in the spring, we had discussed that I think the trust had wanted to see, knowing that there are a couple things more immediately in the works to address our continuation of the safe harbor period. I think the trust wanted to see how things unfolded with DHCD and the resetting of our 10% requirement before moving forward with some of these other locations. And I'll just add or clarify that, as you all know, with Vesper Lane, we're coordinating closely with the hospital on that particular site, and that is not yet ready to move forward, even if we wanted to, let's say, tomorrow morning. But with regard to the other sites, we had wanted to see where DHCD was going to come out on the new 10% number. According to Judy Barrett, who would know as well as anyone, they're anticipating the new requirement to be issued sometime this fall, perhaps in the September or October time frame. And so I just wanted to circle back to the trust and see if folks still felt, given everything that I have mentioned so far, that we wanted to sort of know what those numbers are before we're issuing RFPs for those additional sites. We certainly can be teeing up for that time frame, but wanted to circle back on this discussion. Ken?
Just one point. I also want to point out that a very important consideration with respect to the timing of this is what happens with respect to the Tacoma Green project and the 64 units that are coming on. Because while it is really important to have housing, we need to manage both the ability to stay out of 40B jail as well as bringing housing on at the same time. And so you want to be able to get the maximum money for your dollar in terms of when you're spending it, in terms of when they're going to be available, and that they're going to be able to count not only for housing, but also for helping us meet the 40B deadline. So that's a criteria factor that is an unknown at this point in time. So it makes the decision relative to this not as easy as somebody from the outside looking in saying, why the hell don't you do something? Thank you.
To further clarify that point, Ken, is, given a couple of things that you all are aware of that we have in process, including Tacoma Green, we're looking at a extension, if you will, of our present safe harbor period, which runs until mid-December presently. We're looking at 2 years minimum from that point, with what we already have planned, including Tacoma Green, so that in terms of what we would need next from a safe harbor standpoint would follow 2 years from this December.
Does anybody have questions on that? Well, I recognize the need to kind of wait to see which projects and which unit count falls in the best order to continue to maintain safe harbor. Personally, I'd like to see forward progress on the concepts of the projects, and whether that was us asking Haley to kind of start producing the outlines of the various RFPs. So when we are in a place to decide that, okay, we need 8 units here, so let's send that one, 10 units there, at least there's been more discussion around the goals and concepts for each site personally. So while I recognize one might not be ready to break ground on versus another at the moment, I'd like to get a little finer development schedule versus kind of going. Brooke?
Yeah, I agree that sort of what's the most suitable use for the sites that we have, and starting to outline what an RFP might look like for the different properties we already own, because and those may change. It might be A or B depending on where we are in terms of Chapter 40B and Safe Harbor. But like, I'm thinking about Bartlett Road, right? Is that, another series of rental units, or is that some sort of lots for home ownership opportunities, through ground lease, maybe in collaboration with the Community Land Trust once it's set up. And so I think like sort of having a or B option for each site, and then we can pick our own adventure as we move through that. And I don't mean that in a facetious way, but have flexibility in terms of putting the pieces of the puzzle together as we reflect on what is the most urgent need and how it plays into, or how can we offer different things than we're already done, and how it plays into Chapter 40B and staying in safe harbor and getting to our ultimate goal.
Thank you, Brooke. Any other members with comments? Okay. Tucker, robust enough conversation for you? Looking for any other questions, details, comments on that?
Yeah, no, that was helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So close that. State of the Harbor Housing Workshop. I'm under the impression that this newly rescheduled date is going to push out towards the end of August. If anybody has any, go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, we're pinning it down, but somewhere in the neighborhood of August 24th.
So TBD, more information to come, hopefully by our next meeting, and what that looks like for attendance, both in person and virtual. With that, we'll move on to.
We're hoping to do that as a hybrid meeting. That's what we're looking for space to do it as a hybrid meeting.
Penny, did you want to talk
Yeah,
on that?
I just have this as purely based on curiosity and not a particular opinion, but are we, I guess I would ask through you to Tucker, Brian, are we planning to meet in person this year at all? Or are we going to keep doing this?
Well, I mean, it's really a question for you all, what you would like to do. It certainly, I mean, I think we all have discussed before. My takeaway from prior discussion has been that the trust sees value in, at a minimum, doing hybrid. Zoom allows more attendance, more convenient attendance for folks. So it's a question of whether we want to try to find availability in a room that would allow for the hybrid format versus the strictly Zoom format. But it's really your all's choice.
So I would like to proceed to investigate the hybrid format. I also would like to meet in person some of the other people on this board that I haven't met yet before the year is over. And then there's always the holiday party.
It sounds like Brian's planning an ice cream social.
Yes, I need ice cream. And the holiday party doesn't need to be the winter holidays.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'm all for a hybrid too. I love the Zoom opportunity of, like having Mary Mack on today to be able to ask questions if she wasn't able to get there. I think that this opportunity for people reaches the widest group. So I'm all for it. And I like the fact that it's easy to log on to and record and watch for people.
So is it the groups, like if we were able to do this if the community room, for example, were available at this time, which I'm not sure it is, but just hypothetically, would you like to go to a hybrid meeting starting in August if it were available? No.
As long as we can predetermine the temperature of the room, yes.
Yeah, I would like to see us do it later than August, just with the challenges of navigation right now.
Brooke?
I think it's more than likely we're going to end up in the trailer, just so you know that might be our in-person, our hybrid option. So, and whether that changes anybody's mind about wanting to meet in person. It's a room where we can meet together.
Can we control the temperature?
Yes, more than in the community room, for sure.
And there is parking.
Yeah, not a ton, but there is some. Yeah. So,
all right. So sounds like
Kitchen is
September.
across the street, and they have ice cream. So,
oh, true. Good point.
Putting it out there.
So it sounds like maybe we will try to look at September to try to start doing that. Is there any head nods, thumbs up? Okay.
So we kind of morphed into other business there on that one. And that's cool. So the state of the housing is TBD, but we will post a meeting for that so we can have a quorum in attendance. Suggestion meeting dates, August 16th, we talked about as the next meeting date. As that came up, there were no general objections. So we'll keep working with that one. So close other business and move to board comments. Go ahead, Brooke. No, you went from, there you go.
I know. I realize. I just want to make a comment, and I'm going to make it very generally and generically that there's a lot going on in the community around care for this community in other spheres outside of housing. And I would like to encourage this board to consider collaborations wherever possible with other efforts at care of the year-round community. And I'll leave it at that in very generic form. But, you know, and I think the conversation around, you know, talking to Romaine about Amelia Drive fits into what I'm talking about in terms of how do we partner well with other efforts in the community to do good things for the folks who live here.
Thank you, Brooke. You know, I'll follow that on saying I really appreciated the way the elections went today, not necessarily that I'm going to do an ice cream, but the fact that it was a very collaborative effort with amongst this group. So I would encourage Brooke or anybody who's out there in the community to have people bring us proposals, come to meetings, share in public comment, because I would see us as a collaborative working group, or hope to be. So, any other board comments, new topic, or any follow-ups? Seeing none, close that one. Are we going into executive session today? I apologize that I don't know the answer.
Unless Vicky or Ken has something that they're aware of, we should discuss. I don't have anything in particular. Ken, did you have something?
Yeah, there's just one item that would be very brief that I want to discuss that needs to be done in executive session.
Great.
Okay,
We have a motion.
I'll make the motion that we adjourn this meeting, this regular session, for the purpose of going into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or real value or value of real property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, not to return to the regular meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Chantal by roll call. Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Yuma Sherry,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's and I. See you there.